23 creepy occurrences in the woods, according to Reddit. Number 23. When I was 13, some friends and I camped in a clearing in the woods half a mile or so behind my house. It was a heavily wooded area with a clearing about half the size of a football field. We got there during the day, collected firewood, set up tents, etc. We had a fire, made s'mores, talked about the hot chicks we were definitely gonna hook up with soon, and talk shit to each other. We went to bed, and when we woke up in the morning, there were these tracks all over the place. Almost like tractor tracks, or semi-tracks. And there were these small holes dug to the side of the tracks, like with a small shovel. The tracks were definitely not there the day before. There were at least 100 feet total, or tracks split into 3 or 4 straight lines in the area. None of us ever woke up or remembered hearing anything come through. What's weirder, there was no break in the trees, wider than 4 to 5 feet anywhere in the bushes or trees surrounding the clearing. There's no possible way that anything could have fit through. Number 22. Not a camper or ranger, but an archaeologist. A few years back, we were doing a massive survey in the middle of nowhere in the interior of BC. All the crew had gone home, and it was just my boss and myself left for a few days to follow up and confirm some coordinates and finish some mapping. We head out from the motel an hour or so into the bush, middle of nowhere along deactivated logging roads. Closest town is miles and miles away. We hike out to this one area we had found a site a few weeks previously. For some reason, the whole area just felt off. So, we get down to business, and about 15 minutes after being hunched over mapping, there is this weird, deafening whomp. Like I could feel pressure in my ears. I immediately look at my boss about 20 feet away, and he is white as a ghost, staring back at me, standing. It fucking happens again. Whomp. Ear pressure and chest pressure like I was just squeezed. Chills all over my body, and every hair is standing on end. My boss just looks at me and says, "Let's go." We all grab our shit and speed hike back to the truck. We never discuss it. No clue what it was, but I have never been so freaked out in my life. 10 years later, and I still get chills. Number 21. Eagle Scout. Been on many campouts, hikes, I scuba dive. Very experienced outdoors. Area. This island is fairly medium-sized. Large enough to support its own deer population, but small enough to hike their circumference in a single day. The whole interior is up to 20-foot bluff from the beach, and it's Washington, so basically rainforest dense, evergreens and ferns as tall as a person. Our campsite was up in the forest, about 30 feet back from an animal run down the bluff, which we used to access the beach. Story. I and some other kids took a trip to an island from the weekend. Chartered a Sea Scout boat to take us out and pick us up Sunday. We did islandy things like beach hike, swimming, etc. The usual. I stepped in deer poop barefoot. We made lunch, did some more swimming, started making dinner at dusk, and had a fire going. As we're sitting there chatting, with our dinner wrapped in foil, I look up from the conversation quickly, just on a whim. If you have ever been camping in a dense forest, you know it gets darker faster than a field. I could see the glow of the sunset over the water still, but the trees and everything were all black silhouettes. And there were eyes all around us. At least 15 pairs in total. All the way around outside the light of the cooking coals. All of them were yellow. Some of them were up in the trees. Some of them were peering between the fern leaves. One set was between us and the direction of the tent. I froze, and my sudden stop alerted my friends, who also just stared for a few seconds at the watchers all around us. Luckily, one of them had thought to grab a flashlight before dark. He slowly pulls it up, points at one pair, and flicks it on. It's a fucking raccoon. All the eyes were raccoons. They smelled the cooking, and it drew them from all over the island. We ended up spending until like 2 o'clock, turning off all lights, waiting for eyes to show up, and flashing them with a big 100 lumen stick I had. Even got one to fall out of a tree. I can explain it now, but at the time, it was a terrifying experience. Number 20. I've posted this story before, but here it goes again. I wasn't in the woods, but what I saw came out of the woods behind my house. I saw an alien. No joke. To this day, I still wonder if I was somehow tripping on something I ate on accident or something, but I was about 10 years old and was playing in my room by myself. It was 11 p.m. I had a sliding glass door in my room, and the blinds were pulled over the back. Out of nowhere, the automatic spotlight behind my house turns on, and I look to the sliding glass door, and a figure started approaching the door. At first, I thought it was my neighbor, who was older than me and about the same height. But as it got closer, I realized it was something else. I remember it approaching the door slowly. It stopped at the sliding glass door for a few seconds, and it just started staring at me. It felt like an eternity passed by. Like, I remember specifically how long it felt when, in reality, it was probably only a few seconds. I remember it was dark black. It had a rounded head just like you see in the movies and was about 6 feet tall. 2 arms, 2 legs, really skinny. The thing about it was that it was so close to me, right on the other side of the glass, that there is no way I could have mistaken it for a human. I know what I saw. After a few seconds of staring at me, it just turned to the side and walked away. Long strides. It went out of my view, and I immediately ran out of my room and screamed for my mom. She didn't believe me. I had to sleep in my room that night knowing I had seen a legit alien a few feet away from me earlier. I'm 23 now, and to this day I still get chills when thinking about it. My eyes always start watering when I think about it. I know it wasn't a dream. I know what I saw, and no one believes me. The thing creeps me out most was its demeanor. I remember it coming slowly up to me and walking slowly away. That's what scares me the most. There was no rush to it. It was just watching me. I believe in aliens, but I don't really believe in aliens visiting Earth, so it's been hard to cope with. I think what I saw, if it really was an alien, it was some people called a gray. Fuck. I'm not sleeping tonight. Number 19. I was camping with family over a 3-day weekend. A few of us didn't have to get back to work, so we decided to camp an extra night. What had been a full campground was now down to just us. It was my brother, his young son, me, and my young daughter. About 3 a.m., my daughter woke up and said that she had to go to the bathroom. She had to drop a deuce, so there was no getting her to squat outside the tent. The outhouse was like 100 yards away through the pitch-dark campground, and the fire had gone out and there was not really any moonlight. I got up with her, grabbed a flashlight, and we headed to the outhouse. She did her business, and I stood outside the outhouse, and I'd be lying if I said I weren't a little scared, standing out there in the woods, in the dark, miles from anywhere, with my 7-year-old daughter inside a dark outhouse by herself. Luckily, she was quick, and we stumbled back to the camp in the dark, with just the flashlight to lead us. The walk back was uneventful. We chatted a little bit. I tried to reassure her she was safe out here in the darkness, and as she had gotten a little scared as she realized how alone we were in the empty campground. As we got about 50 feet from the camp, my daughter suddenly grabbed my hand tight and said in a scared whisper yell, "Daddy, who is that?" "Who is what, honey? I don't see anything."
"That man right there, who is that?"
I shined the light where she was looking, and I couldn't see anyone. I grabbed her hand tighter and picked up the pace to get us back to the tent, which was only safety there was out here, and I knew that in the dark like this, we were really in trouble if there was some sketcher out there messing with us. We got back, and I got us in the tent, and we got in our sleeping bags, and I laid there and listened for any sound outside the tent. And of course, there were millions of sounds that I hadn't noticed before, and each one of them made me more and more terrified of whoever it was she saw out there. As she started to get sleepy, she asked if we were all right. I said yes, even though I was completely freaking out. I asked her what the man had looked like, and she said he looked like a Native American. I laid there for what seemed like hours. It was probably only 15 minutes until I couldn't take it anymore. I woke up my brother and told him what happened, and he is a lot more comfortable in the woods than I am, so he got up and got the fire going again. We sat by the fire until daylight, and nothing ever happened. The next day, I asked my daughter about the man she saw, and she didn't remember it. To this day, she doesn't remember the event. The area where we were camping in was well known for being a historical place where Native Americans had lived and flourished until they were forced into reservations or killed. Neither my brother or me could find any sign of anyone out there. If they had been walking around the woods, we would have heard them for sure. My only explanation is that she was so tired that she fell asleep, walking back in the little micro-sleep something and dreamed it. But to this day, it still freaks me the fuck out. Number 18. While prospecting out here in the Caribou region, I came across a set of rock piles known as Chinese piles out in the middle of nowhere. These being here means someone did a lot of digging back in the day, so I started working. And after half an hour, I had about 10 grams of gold. I was having a happy dance when I noticed the small standing stones on each of the rock walls. Each stone had several Chinese characters on them, and in a moment of dread, I realized they were graves. I put the gold in a glass bottle I found nearby and left it behind. I also took down drawings of the symbols to show a local historian who later confirmed my suspicion that yes, they were graves, and they likely hadn't been seen in 150 years. Chinese miners believe that if a miner died on site, the ground becomes cursed by the fallen miner's spirit, so they wouldn't continue to mine the area and would tell anyone that met the area was worked out. Sometimes they would also do extra work to make sure the site looked finished off so people wouldn't end up digging up their comrades. I've been back several times, but I won't dig there out of respect. The site's super creepy in the morning fog, and you can see almost people's outlines sighting around the piles. One of the stories my boss out there told me about was when he got involved with some sketchy folk from Prince George back in the 70s and went with them looking for some mining gear to steal so they could claim jump a site a few kilometers down the road. My boss went down the forgotten path into a clearing while two ancient bulldozers in a small cabin, and the rest went to the bulldozers to see if they ran, while the boss went into the cabin and was greeted by a skeleton laying on the bed with a bullet hole through his head. They brought in the cops, and they figured the guy had been there since 1935, since that was the last date on the newspapers inside. I went to the same cabin with a few weeks back and found the place had been burned down by quarters. Wow. All right. Number 18. Just a few weeks ago, made our way to a very remote valley that is very difficult to access. Think walking on 1-inch ledges, dropping into narrow crevasses, etc. The valley ends in a sharp drop with a waterfall that is about 100 feet high. We were almost at the drop when we heard a whistle. It sounded a lot like a hiking whistle, but we only met one group of people the entire day, and they had stopped way before we did, as they thought the mountain slope was not passable. According to our calculations, the group should have long left and headed back to the base camp, so it made no sense. Then we heard another whistle. We yelled, "Hello?" And immediately we heard a whistle back. The whistle was coming up through the thick trees up on the very steep slope of the mountain encircling the valley. The slope was about 75 to 80 degrees. The only way we could make it up there would be if we were pulling ourselves up by tree branches and roots because it was so steep. Just as we were debating whether the whistles were indeed hikers' whistles, a helicopter suddenly rose from behind the waterfall. It rose right above us, then turned around and flew away. It was an unmarked helicopter, and the nearest airfield is about 100 miles away. We figured it had to have a search mission out for someone, so that must have been a hiker's whistle. However, it was strange that the person would whistle repeatedly, but never yell back. We yelled again. Y'all are crazy. The whistle recurred. Suddenly, we heard the helicopter rotor again. Not 3 to 4 minutes later, we saw the helicopter rise above the valley again, hover for about 30 seconds, then fly away over the mountain. We went ahead and crossed the creek to climb the mountain slope. We scrambled up, grabbing onto roots and branches, and the whistling ceased. We yelled a few more times, but no response. It took us 4 hours to make our way out thereafter. The bushes were so thick at times that we walked on branches above the ground, and I could see my hand in front of me. I still have no idea who was whistling. It was a very mechanical whistle. I've been out in the wilderness quite a few times and have never heard a bird whistle that was anywhere close to that. Number 17. Not me, but my parents. They went camping on their honeymoon 20 years ago. They're still married. They went to the Garden of the Gods. This is in hick country. Southern Illinois, everybody is related type place. But they're walking the trails and they stumble upon a dead body. Thinking it was a joke, they walk over and immediately realize that it is in fact a real dead body. My mom pushes my dad over and gets the fuck up out of there. They go to town, which is like 25 minutes away, and tell the chief policeman there. He thinks they're just fucking with him since they're both young at the time, 18 and 19. Anyways, he finally decides to check it out after them hounding him. And they get there, and it turns out that the man had been laying there dead for 4 days. He had been stabbed or something. Not sure on the details of how he died, but I've heard the story a million times growing up and thought I'd share it. Well, there you go. Number 17. Camping with family and friends up in the mountains. Sharing a tent with my brother, let's call him Luke, and another friend, let's call him Evan. Luke, Evan, and I weren't tired, and everyone retreated to our tents for the night. But the fire was dimming out, and we were bored. So we went inside our tent to watch Adventure Time on my laptop until it died. We all passed out after a few episodes, and I woke up sometime during the night into an episode of sleep paralysis. I have weird habits and experiences with sleep paralysis every few months or so. For those who haven't had it, basically you're awake but you cannot move. And sometimes sometimes experience auditory and visual hallucinations. I was aware of this, so I did have a full-on heart attack when I started hearing shuffling noises outside my tent, which continued and got louder and closer until the fabric of the tent itself was being touched by something. My computer hadn't yet died, so I could see my surroundings in the dim light of the screen. I watched the fabric compress as something pushed against it sporadically about our feet off the ground, then moved around the tent towards me. I watched 3 distinct impressions follow this creature around the side of the tent. It looked like a claw. I was terrified and filled with adrenaline, but another part of me remained calm. Assuring my body it was all a dream I couldn't do anything about. So my fear was pointless. But as I continued to observe it, my sleep paralysis began to fade, and I realized I could move. No longer so convinced I was dreaming, I reached over and shoved Luke awake. I tried to get him to look to see if there was really something out there, but I must have sounded like I was sleep-talking because he just rolled over and went back to sleep, waving me off. Eventually, the rustling stopped, and I was tired and groggy enough that I quickly fell back asleep. In the morning, I'd forgotten all about it. That is, until my brother-in-law, who was in the other tent, let's call him Dean, said to us, "It's a good thing we put that dog in the car last night. There was a bear here while you were sleeping." Dean pointed at the tree where we'd strung up our trash so animals wouldn't get it, and the fresh, gaping claw marks about 9 feet up the trunk. It hit me like a truck. I had seen the bear and calmly watched it test the fabric of my tent 12 inches from my face. Well. Number 16. When camping with my girlfriend last year, we arrived to campsite only to see a ranger putting up signs stating that this was the last weekend the campsites were open due to the end of the season. That night we decided our tent was not going to keep us warm enough, so we slept in the car. The next morning we woke up and noticed a huge paw print on the back window right above where our heads were. Thankfully, we didn't have any food in the car, but still creepy finding bear paw prints. Bears are scary, yo. Number 15. Had lions, leopards, and elephants outside my tent. Lions seem to think of tents as solid objects, so they're not much of a worry, which is a comfort when one is coughing 2 feet from your head. Elephants are a real worry and dangerous as fuck, but they had no reason to do anything but saunter by. Never saw nor heard the lepers. They're like ghosts. but they leave tracks. Apparently they gave me supply tents some attention, but thought the better of it. We mostly stay in the tent at night, and if you have to take a piss, you don't go far from the fire. Number 14. When I was about 18, me and some friends took a road trip about 7 hours or so down to the Appalachia National Forest near Tallahassee, Florida. We were going to do a little car camping, drink a few ice-cold natty lights, 18-year-old stuff. As such, we didn't want to be bothered by any park rangers, so we drove way deep into the woods. Got there, set up camp, had said natty lights, and me and a guy decided to do a little exploring. So we walked about 100 yards from our site back to the main road, saw another path directly across from us, and started walking. Immediately, we started seeing signs that someone had lived there for a while. Big bags of trash, shit like that. Should have been a huge red flag to turn around, but, 18. Nothing could hurt us. So we get to this campsite of an older white guy living out of his van, clothesline strung up, coolers placed all around it, and a big, gorgeous dog. I think maybe a golden retriever. We tried to back out, but he sees us and starts talking. He's friendly enough, asks us where we're from, tells us about some cool spots to check out in the park, and we end up chatting for 10 minutes and going on our way. I kept thinking to myself how odd it was that he gave us directions and steps, not yards or miles. Guy always seemed to be off balance, not stumbling or drunk, but like he was walking on a balance beam, swaying from side to side. Oh, and he was super excited to talk about national parks and forests where we were from. Okay, camping part over. We went back to our tents. Fast forward 2 months later, same buddy calls me late at night and tells me to turn on the TV to the news. I oblige. I see an old dude with a van. You see where this is headed, but I didn't. So I get pissed at my friend for waking me up, and he's like, no, watch. And then I see the golden retriever and it all clicks. What the fuck? The man's name was Gary Michael Hilton, convicted of at least 4 murders. He kidnapped and murdered a girl on Blood Mountain, Georgia, an older couple in Pisgash, North Carolina, a girl in the Appalachian at the campsite not long after we left. Yes, the very same places we had been talking to us about, and obviously we called the cops. They put us in touch with the FBI. F is for Florida. What? And we get flown down to the investigators to the campsite. Point out every spot we saw anything and tell them exactly what he told us. And show them the places he described to us. I didn't find out until after the trial, but apparently they found what appeared to be a partially destroyed human finger bones in the area near the site. Had to fly down again to testify. Scary shit, man. That's fucking scary. You went above and beyond, bro. You braver than some of these people out in these streets. Number 13. My dad was up camping in Canada. He was sleeping naked in his tent in a patch of the woods near some train tracks. A bear cub came rustling up and messing with the tent. My dad, who had long hair and a beard at the time, grabs a long Bowie knife and runs outside the tent. Notices the bear cub. Where the bear cub is, the mama cub is nearby. He backs up near the train tracks, and just as an early morning freight train comes by, he could see the engineer looking at him in horror, thinking this long-haired, bearded hippie with a big knife was going to try to hijack the train. He got a visit from the Mounties later that day, inquiring on if he had seen any angry hippies with weapons around. That's a different kind of creepy. Number 12. Camping in National Park up north a few weeks ago, I was sleeping in a tiny cabin with 2 friends outside in their tent. Friend's dog sleeping on the ground outside the tent. Around 2 or 3 a.m., my friend started hearing a yipping sound. A coyote was trying to get her dog to come to it. so the whole pack could jump in and eat the dog. Oh. Fortunately, the dog was dumb or smart enough to stay where he was, and the friend put him in the cabin with me. Coyotes didn't like this at all and started howling and howling all around us for several minutes. It creeped me the fuck out, but at least the dog's okay. Well, at least the dog is okay. Number 11. 2 tents next to each other about 5 feet apart in the middle of the mountains. Had my 3 little brothers in one tent and me and my girlfriend in another. It's nighttime, and we have just put the fire out, so it's dark. Everyone in their respective tents snoozing off to dreamland. About an hour later, I'm the only one awake, just daydreaming. Suddenly I hear soft human-like steps circling our tents over and over. Confused, I ask who's there, with no response but continued footsteps, so I step outside. No one. Footsteps stop. I go back into my tent. Footsteps start again. I make my presence known and go back out. No one. Footsteps stop. Of course, I check on my brothers, but they are asleep and sound. I repeat the same process about 4 or 5 more times, and believe it or not, footsteps always stopped. Ended up just going to sleep to the footsteps and not giving a fuck. When morning came, I asked my brothers how they slept, and they responded with, "Fine, except you walking loudly around all of the goddamn campsite all night." Okay. Number 10. Was solo backpacking and decided to stop for the night as it was right around sunset. Got everything set up and I heard a car on a road about 1,500 feet from my position. Honestly, I didn't even realize that it was a road there because it was up a steep embankment and I couldn't see it. So I hear this car, then it slows and then it stops. Then the doors open and close and the car drives off. I hear a group of men talking, but they were too far away to make out what they were saying. By now the sun has set, and the men began using flashlights. They appear to be descending the steep embankment towards me. I'm not a little concerned, as nothing about this is adding up. I'm now a little concerned. They appear to be descending the steep embankment towards me, and I figure they get closer, I'll try to quietly escape and leave my gear. They stop about halfway down, and then they start fucking digging with shovels. Now I'm shitting my pants. They dig for about an hour, then stop. Then I hear the car return. They begin to ascend the embankment, but before they do, they shine their flashlights down on my position. I don't move a muscle, and they didn't seem to notice me. I just sat there, didn't move a muscle for at least an hour after they had gone. I packed up and moved about 1/4 of a mile away, deeper into the woods and well off the trail, just in case they had seen me and were going to come back. The next day I hiked out, found a park ranger, and gave him a map that I had drawn of the area where the digging had taken place. He asked me to accompany him to the spot. Fuck that, buddy. That's not what it says, but the guy says he refused, and I think I captured the general flavor of how he felt as it pertains to the invitation. Number 9. I used to spend a lot of time solo camping in and around the Indian Peaks wilderness in Colorado and experience some weird stuff. Nothing that was out and out supernatural, but just unsettling. I love those woods, but they give me the creeps. Here are some notable examples from the 4 to 5 trips up there in all seasons. Number 1. After thinking that a particular area under a tree against a rock looked like a great place to set up for the night, I found a shredded sleeping bag and an old, must have been 20 years or more, bag of camp supplies. Found a lot of bones around the site too, ribs and vertebrae, probably elk, but maybe not. I camped somewhere else. Number 2. Found a deer skull out in the middle of a recently frozen over lake pond. Major snow the night there before, and the skulls was sitting on top of fresh powder with no tracks anywhere. I could see and no other bones. Odd. Number 3. Woke up to a squirrel literally nailed to a tree outside my shelter. I had made camp late and tired and dying light, so I might not have noticed it there the night before, but I think I would have, which means it happened sometime while I was asleep. Huh. Here we go. A lot of creepiness and happenings in the area are blamed on the so-called rainbow people. Not the rainbow family, they're fine. According to local legend, they're a group of vagrant hippies who started a simple living cult in the 70s and 80s, went up into the woods and just never left. More colorful tellings say that the years of isolation and hippie philosophizing warped their minds. The police in the small mountain towns like Nederland and Ward acknowledge the existence of small groups of people who may or may not be these folks, and warn that they should be considered dangerous. Apparently, they wander around breaking into remote cabins for food, supplies, and taking any drug they can manage to get their hands on. A close friend has pretty creepy stories about an encounter with a rainbow person. He was living in his father's house, a cabin off the grid near the Netherlands. No running water, plumbing, no heat, no electricity, where he had a room on the ground floor with a bed directly underneath a large glass sliding door that directly faced thick woods. One night he was woken up by the sound of something tapping at the glass door. He checked his watch, and it was around midnight. Half asleep, he blamed it on the wind and without looking, rolled over to go back to sleep. Later, he's woken up again. Watch says it's about an hour later, to the same tapping. He realizes something. There is no wind tonight, the trees are still. Suddenly awake, he grabs his handgun. By his bed, mountain kids, am I right? Sits up and turns to look. There, not 5 feet from him on the other side of the glass, is a frail, hairy, dirty, ghastly man with tattered clothing and bloodshot eyes staring right at him. At the sight of the gun, the guy scampers back into the woods, but apparently he had been standing there tapping and staring for an hour or more. We used to go out into the woods and party during our high school years since nobody would bother us and it was easier than staying in town. More than once we'd be discussing the night the morning after and realizing in a group of 30 to 50 kids that there were 2 or 3 people who nobody knew. They showed up out of nowhere, talked with people, got high, then seemed to vanish. Not hard to get away with when everyone is drunk and stoned out of their minds, but unsettling. Once, one of them gave my friend a necklace made of a piece of, allegedly, wolf jaw, and told her to wear it in the woods so the spirits didn't hunt her. She didn't realize that nobody knew the person until days later. Well, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6. Just a few weeks ago, we were on a road trip from British Columbia to San Diego, and we came upon a campsite just outside of Crescent City, California. We drove through. One side of the campground was relatively empty. I noticed a few scattered tents, but nobody close to the location we ended up picking. We had tons of space. We wanted an early night, so I decided to start a fire, while my girlfriend started cooking. We ate, had a few beers, and climbed up to our rooftop tent with our dog by 9 p.m. or so. I had a rough time sleeping and woke up a few times, but finally fell into a decent sleep. In the pitch dark, with all of our tent windows and canvases closed, I was awoken at 1 a.m. by someone whistling outside of our tent to the tune of "When the Saints Come Marching In." After a few minutes of this repetitive whistling, I nudged my girlfriend, who awoke and was obviously freaked out as well. The whistling turned to chanting things like, "When you sleep here, you disrespect me. When you disrespect me, you disrespect the U.S. Marines." The person would then start spelling out words like F-L-E-E. The verbiage and tone kept getting more aggressive, so we decided we had to make a move. I slowly unzipped the tent while our guard dog was snoring and got my head out of it. I took a few seconds to let my eyes adjust and figure out where the person was. I felt more confident once I could see somewhat and hear, so I climbed down with the girlfriend past me and the dog, and she climbed out too. We flipped the tent up without securing it, and we jumped into the truck, while the person was still whistling, to a motel in Crescent City. The next morning, we drove back to get the few belongings that weren't in the truck, and a family who had been camping a few sites over said it went on for another 2 to 3 hours, and it was the scariest thing their family had ever experienced. Damn. Number 5. Camping with 2 friends, middle of the night. All 3 of us inside square dome tent, just chilling out, chatting, lights are on. One side of the wall begins to cave inward, as if there's a strong wind or something or someone pushing on the side of the tent. Everyone's freaking out, but I assume it's the wind. Chill the fuck out, guys. Proceed to jump up and punch the tent and connect with something or someone. Feeling of the punch of flesh is unmistakable. Now I freak the fuck up. What or who did I just punch through the tent wall? Convince friends it's the smartest to have a look outside the tent, but it's 15 minutes later by the time they agree, and there's nothing there. That's a good one. Number 4. When I was a kid, about 12 or so, my dad would always wake me in the middle of the night to go hunting. I fucking hate hunting. A few weeks prior to this night, I saw an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark about the Jersey Devil. I was on edge because I knew my dad would make me go hunting as soon, and we sometimes hunt in Jersey. Sure as shit, he wakes me up one morning at like 3 a.m. and we were off to the woods in Jersey in pitch black so that he could be there and all set up before the deer come out. I'm up in the stand, starting to calm down, when I see a little figure on the ground. It's human, with a face I can barely make out since it's a bit far in the distance, but I know it's human, and it's like 2 to 3 feet tall? I'm losing my shit, but don't know what to say If anything, because I know my dad will just tell me to suck it up. I stare at this fucker for at least 4 hours until we get down from the stand and walk towards it to leave. It's a fucking lawn gnome. Miles and miles into the deep woods. There's no roads for a long time, and certainly no houses. How the fuck did a gnome get out here? The stand we were in wasn't even a permanent stand. It was one we out up when we got there. Well, number 3. Buddy and I were hiking at dawn during a camping trip, walking along a path, and I hear a zing like a bird chirp by my ear. A second or so later, a tree kind of pops next to my buddy. It's at this point that we realized there was an accompanying crack, and that we'd been shot at. We informed the park ranger around noon, and he ended up finding an old guy hunting illegally. Not sure if he was charged with anything. What the fuck? If he found a guy hunting illegally, the guy went to jail, says a response. Let's not get burdened in people's responses, Kyle. Number 2. On a road trip with a friend, and we hiked into a trail in Colorado one evening to a camp so we wouldn't have to pay for a campsite. Found a little clearing by a stream, and my friend set up a tent while I decided to sleep under the stars. Right as we were getting ready to go to sleep, another woman showed up and pitched her tent in the clearing as well. I'd been feeling well that day. Plus, we had the hike with all our stuff, so when I slept hard. Woke up to a ranger shaking me and asking if I saw where the bear went. The bear? What bear? Then I look up and see the woman's tent just shredded. Turns out she had left food in her tent that night. We hung hours from a tree, and a curious bear came by at like 4 a.m. to have a snack. In tearing into her tent, it ended up raking its claws across her forehead as well. She decided to get the fuck out. Though why she didn't bother waking either me or my friend up to let us know that there is a very hungry bear nearby, I don't know. Maybe she didn't have the time. Number 1. This ended up being funny at the time, but freaked me out at first. My wife and I were camping in one of the national forests in the mountains in North Carolina. We were in a campground, but not a lot of people there, and the spots were semi-private because of the trees and foliage. So we had just settled down in the tent, and I was just falling asleep when through my eyelids the whole tent lights up. I jump up and go out and the tent thinking someone is messing around. Not a soul or any noise, nothing. I go back in and lay down and just start falling asleep again when I see it a second time. Same routine. Jump up and check, nothing. This time I lay down but stay awake and have the tent unzipped, ready to jump out and catch whoever is shining a light on the tent when it all lights up again. And I saw what was doing it right away. Fireflies were landing in mass on the tent, and then they would all light up at once. I guess when I would jump up, they would fly off, then settle down again after it got quiet. I had a good chuckle. That's kind of crazy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this list. As crazy as this sounds, this entire list is essentially a thank you to Regina, who made a pretty generous contribution to me on the way to my new computer. As crazy as this sounds, I am recording this on a friend's laptop in a car right now. And boy, am I uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I need to jump the fuck up and have a fucking walk. So I apologize if you could hear me shifting around a little bit in the middle of this recording. I'd like to, oh God, just thank you for listening. Thank you for being a friend. And I hope that this I hope that this was something you enjoyed. Have a good night. See you soon.